This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your source for the latest Iowa ag news headlines right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, Mark Magnuson, and Andy Peterson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Dustin.
Welcome to Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Huffman. Today is the 28th of July, 2025 on this Monday. So glad you could join us here today. Coming up a little later on in the program, we'll talk with Curt Kimmel of agmarket.net and find out what happened to those closing numbers. But right now, we're going to sit down for the first part of our monthly chat with Iowa Ag Secretary Mike Naig. Time for our monthly chat with Iowa Ag Secretary Mike Naig. And Secretary, thanks so much for joining us here again.
Hey, always great to catch up.
All right, so we'll go ahead and jump into things. I mean, what a difference a year makes. We were in July of last year, and we had rain, and things were looking good. But by this time, the faucet had already shut off, and we were looking at a little bit of a stretch there where we weren't getting any rain. But right now, boy, things are just looking almost picture perfect in most of the state.
Really, they are. It is incredible to think 1 year ago. In fact, just yesterday, I was up in Spencer area, had a chance to do some looking back at some of the flood damage that we saw last year. But you correctly point out, we went from a wet spring to a very dry summer. And in fact, by the end of the year, most folks around the state would tell me we ran out of moisture and saw some yield impact because of it. This year, different story. We've got moisture. Now, actually, for the first time in several years, we've actually got a couple pockets in the state where there's been too much water. We actually have some drowned out spots and some crops, some corn that just looks a little slow because it's got its feet wet. But boy, as I travel, and I've been all over, the crop looks fantastic. It's that dark green that you want to see this time of year. Tassels are out, and my goodness, we're getting 50s and 60s overnight, which is exactly what you need to see. So whether you look at the drought map or you look at the crop or you look at that precipitation, we're kind of right where we want to be in the middle of July. In fact, I think we're going to say that the July already, we had basically hit our kind of average for the month of July, historical average for the month of July when we were just halfway through. So that's the kind of active weather pattern that we've seen.
Now, of course, also what's been good is, except for a few minimal spots here and there, the storm damage has even been minimal. Now, there have been spots that have been hit by wind and some hail and stuff, but for the most part, we've been pretty fortunate.
Well, last weekend we had finally a couple of reports of a couple of weak tornadoes, which again, comparing to last year where we had historic outbreak in May and June, really, except for those spots. And there's been some hail and there's certainly been some straight line wind and a couple of those weak tornadoes. Thank the Lord, that we've had this active weather pattern, but it has largely come without severe weather. So a blessing to be sure.
Now, moving on here a little bit, a month ago when we were talking, there was concern over the reconciliation bill and whether it would get through the House and the Senate, and boy, it has gotten through now. Now that we're looking at some of the programs that got included, but we also know there's things that need to still be included, and on a farm bill, an updated farm bill is still going to be the way to go for that.
Yeah, again, I know you and I have talked about this multiple times, really over the last 2 years, which is to say that we would all rather have had a comprehensive 5-year farm bill, that we did this all together in one place through the normal House and Senate Agriculture Committee process. But the reality of election cycles and just what needed to get done is we had to have that budget reconciliation, a bill that passed through some very important tax provisions for agriculture, updated reference prices, which again, you're talking about prices that had been set 8, 9, 10 years ago when the last bill was developed. And so for those things, locking in the tax credits and the tax treatment for Americans and for agriculture is a huge deal. Second to that is those reference prices and creating more certainty where we need it. But now you've got this question of, well, there's still policy pieces that need to be addressed. And frankly, there's some have to pass provisions of a farm bill that we really do have to get through in some vehicle this fall. And now the work has to turn to, call it a skinny farm bill or a cleanup farm bill or a slim down, whatever you want to. There's a piece of farm policy that really does need to move this year. And frankly, there's some talk about, gee, did the coalition break down so much now because of what happened in the budget reconciliation that you can't have this skinny farm bill? Well, we need to move beyond that because farm policy critically important, and folks had better get to the table and get working on it. And I appreciate that G.T. Thompson in the House and Senator Bozeman in the Senate, certainly on the Republican side, have indicated they are full speed ahead. Now we need to make sure that we get Democrats to the table, get folks to the table, work this out, pass this, and then we can start to set our sights on what a comprehensive farm bill looks like the next time around.
And another thing that was talked about with the reconciliation bill was not estate tax, but what we call the death tax, capital gains tax. I know there was concern from people that, well, this is only going to help big businesses. And yes, there's going to be some big businesses that will benefit, but for farmers, this is a big deal because our operations don't run the same as a traditional business does.
Well, it just flat out, there is no way to pass a farm business to the next generation without these kinds of provisions. Farmers are asset rich and cash poor, and when you have that scenario, and by the way, it's not just ag, right? There's small family-owned businesses that would fit into these types of things too. You have to have the elimination of that estate tax or increasing the limits in a way that does accommodate for what a family farm looks like. And so again, I appreciate that those were pieces that made it into that bill. We've got certainty now. Rarely do I say something so definitively, but like without that, you will kill the ability of a family to pass a farm to the next generation. Critically important.
That again was Iowa Agriculture Secretary Mike Naig. We'll have more coming up next time. I host AMPM coming up on Thursday. We're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff, and then we'll run down the closing numbers. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net. We're back on Ag Matters PM, and we are talking right now with Curt Kimmel of agmarket.net. Curt, how do we see those grains shape up here on the end of this Monday?
They're a little soft. We saw the corn down 5 to 6 cents a bushel, beans down about 9. Wheat was a little soft. The old adage, rain makes grain, and corn makes whiskey. And the rest of the story there. But trade viewing things fairly decent, even though there is too much rain in some areas. There's everyone knows we're fighting some fungus and some wet feet in some areas. But for the most part, this afternoon's crop conditions reports expect to show corn 74% good to excellent, same as last week. Beans 68% good to excellent, same as last week. Wheat harvest supposed to be over 80% complete there. Guys are spraying, trying to decide when to spray to keep that spray on the crop as long as we can in through here. Did see some sales this morning, sold 225,000 tons of corn to Mexico and about 229,000 tons of corn to unknown destination. Most of that's the new crop coming up in through here. So market just has no real enthusiasm with everything kind of green here, maybe too green in some areas there, Dustin.
So then a quick question. A lot of people have been asking, the trade deadline is looming. Now we did get a trade deal with the EU, but a trade deadline still looming for Friday. Has the market pretty well priced that in already? And is it just weather controlling it, or could we see some kind of reversal if things don't change up by Friday?
Yeah, I think that still is a conversational piece, and the deal and how the breakdown and whether countries comply with it or not. But the big dog, and they're meeting in Stockholm, is with China. That's the main one. I mean, they're all important. Don't get me wrong, but the China deal's the main one, and the trade kind of feels that they'll make some headway, then they'll move the date back a little bit more. But the Chinese is the most important because basically we're entering that time window. Normally they start to be buying grain now for this winter shipment. So we'll see what unfolds here. They might do a good faith purchase here, just to keep everybody's interest on that. But trade's important. The thing I don't know is they've been talking about investment in the U.S. Hopefully that's not investment buying farm ground off my neighbor.
All right. Well, Curt, then moving over to the livestock side of things, how did cattle and hogs do today?
Well, they were firm. Didn't quite, they closed fairly good. Fats were up about $1.40, $1.60. Hogs were mixed. Feeders up over $2. cattle and feed report, it was positive. We saw 98 on feed, place 92, marketing's 95 there. So it still continues to be a tight situation fundamentally. And so we're in a situation that really hasn't changed a whole lot. Labor Day weekends, a little ways away, but hopefully we won't lose consumer confidence. Also, a cattle inventory report came out, all calves 98, beef cows 98, dairy 100.5, and just the annual crop report's 98. So as long as demand stays in there, it should be good. Cold storage came out, particularly on pork, seeing just a little tighter pork there. So maybe get some brats before they go up there, Dustin.
Well, that sounds like a plan there, Curt. You don't have to tell me twice, but if folks want to pick your guys' brains there at agmarket.net, think about what they should be looking at for their marketing plans. What's the best way for them to do that?
1-800-779-1515, or else go to agmarket.net, click on Intel. This afternoon, we'll have our fundamental video up. So we'll have the team get together here this afternoon, kind of share some knowledge and some ideas. So check that out later this evening.
All right, Curt Kimmel of agmarket.net's been our guest. Curt, thanks so much for the information.
You bet.
And that again was Curt Kimmel of agmarket.net. Let's go ahead and take a look at the closing numbers here on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network market screen. At the close, September corn down 5 3/4 at 3.93 3/4. August beans down a dime at 9.88 3/4. Soy meal down $2.90 at 264.90. Soy oil up 6 cents at 56.55. Chicago wheat up a quarter cent at 5.38 1/2. Kansas winter wheat down a half at 5.26 even. Kansas spring wheat down 4 at 5.41 even. Minneapolis spring wheat down 3 1/4 at 5.81 1/2. Oats up 7 3/4 at 3.69 3/4. On the Merck live cattle up $1.40 at 227.87. Feeders up $2.15 at 333.52. Lean hogs down 17 cents at 108.52. Pork cutouts unchanged at 112.40, and Class 3 milk up 11 cents at 17.34. And that's been a check of our closing numbers, and that brings us to the end of today's show. You can find all our content online at iowaagnet.com, as well as follow us on Facebook, X, and on our YouTube channel. Don't forget about the Free Market Podcast coming out 3 times a day to your mobile device through Amazon, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and Podbean. From the IRN studios in Des Moines, I'm Dustin Huffman. For Riley Smith, Mark Magnuson, Andy Peterson, and Ashton Jolly, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.